When the moon bleeds over broken stone. The moon bled red over the ruins of Ashenvale, and the wind carried the scent of smoke and wolf. The valley had been silent for 3 days. Silent in the way that bones are silent, in the way that graves refuse to speak. But tonight the silence broke. Luna Maren stood at the edge of the orphanage courtyard, her breath fogging in the frigid air. She was not a large wolf in her human form. Slender, with silver-streaked hair that fell past her shoulders and eyes the color of winter storms. But when she shifted, when the moon pulled at the beast beneath her skin, she was something else entirely, something ancient, something that remembered when the first wolves walked upright and claimed dominion over the wild places. The children were sleeping, 6 of them, ranging from 4 to 12 years old, orphans of the border wars, left behind when their packs were slaughtered by rogues and rival clans. Maren had found them one by one, a pup shivering in the snow, another hiding beneath the corpse of his mother, 2 sisters clinging to each other in a burned-out den. She had brought them here, to this forgotten sanctuary on the edge of the Thornwood, where the Alpha King's reach was uncertain and the old gods still whispered through the pines. She could hear them breathing inside. The smallest one, Kyle, was whimpering in his sleep again. Nightmares. He always had nightmares. Maren's fingers tightened on the staff she carried, not a weapon, but a walking stick worn smooth by years of travel. She had no pack, no mate, no children of her own, though her body ached with the phantom memory of what might have been. She was a Luna without a pack, a wolf without a howl. The other wolves called her ghost-touched, cursed, but the children called her nothing at all. They simply followed her with their eyes and slept easier when she was near. The scent hit her before the sound did. Blood, fur, the acrid tang of aggression and malice. Her head snapped toward the tree line, and her wolf surged beneath her skin, clawing for release. She shifted before she could think, bones cracking and reforming, fur erupting along her spine. The transformation was pain and ecstasy, a tearing open of the self and a becoming of something more. She landed on 4 legs, her silver coat gleaming in the moonlight, her ears flattened against her skull. They came from the north. 12 rogues, their eyes burning yellow in the darkness, their pelts matted and scarred. They moved like a storm, all teeth and fury, and at their center was a massive black wolf with a white scar running down his muzzle. The leader. She could smell the madness on him, the bloodlust that had no reason and no mercy. Maren positioned herself between the rogues and the orphanage. Her lips curled back from her teeth, and a low growl rumbled from her chest. She was one wolf. They were 12, but she had something they did not. She had something to protect. The black wolf snarled, and the pack charged. Maren met them head-on. She was smaller, but she was faster, her movements a blur of silver and snow. She caught the first rogue by the throat and tore, hot blood spraying across the frozen ground. The second came from the left, and she spun, her claws raking across his eyes. He howled and stumbled back, blinded. But there were too many. They surrounded her, snapping and tearing, their jaws finding purchase on her flanks and shoulders. Pain exploded through her body, white-hot and all-consuming. She could feel her blood soaking into her fur, could taste iron in her mouth. Behind her she heard a sound that made her heart stop, a child's scream. She turned and saw them. 6 small faces pressed against the window of the orphanage, their eyes wide with terror. Kyle, the smallest, was crying, his tiny fists pressed against the glass. The others were pulling him back, trying to shield him, but he wouldn't move. He was staring at her, his mouth forming a single word. Mother. Maren felt something break inside her chest, not her ribs, something deeper. She threw herself forward with a roar that shook the trees, her claws finding the black wolf's throat. He was bigger, stronger, but she didn't care. She drove him back, away from the orphanage, away from the children, even as the other rogues tore into her from all sides. She could hear shouting now, distant voices, the thunder of paws on frozen earth, reinforcements, the Alpha King's patrol, finally arriving. But it was too late. The black wolf's jaws closed around her neck, and she felt the vertebrae crack. Her vision went white, then dark, then nothing at all. The last thing she saw was Cale's face in the window, tears streaming down his cheeks, his small hand pressed against the glass, as if he could reach her through the barrier of wood and stone and time. And then the world went silent. The Alpha King's arrival, at dawn Thorn Blackwater, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, arrived with the dawn. He was a wolf of legend, massive even in his human form, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of 3 packs and eyes that burned like embers in the half-light. His dark hair was pulled back in a warrior's knot, and his jaw was set in a line that spoke of a man who had seen too much death and learned to swallow his grief like poison. He dismounted from his horse and surveyed the carnage. 12 rogue bodies littered the courtyard, their blood staining the snow black. His patrol had killed the survivors, but the damage was done. The orphanage was intact, the children safe, but the Luna... He saw her lying in the center of the courtyard, her silver fur matted with blood, her body utterly still. His second in command, a scarred wolf named Garrett, was kneeling beside her, his hand pressed against her neck. "She's alive," Garrett said, his voice rough. "Barely." Thorn crossed the distance in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside the fallen Luna. Up close, he could see the extent of her injuries. Her throat was torn, her ribs crushed, her spine twisted at an unnatural angle. By all rights, she should be dead. But her heart was still beating, faint and irregular, but beating. "Get a healer," Thorn ordered. "Now." Garrett nodded and disappeared. Thorn's gaze moved to the orphanage, where 6 small faces were still pressed against the window. They were watching him with expressions that ranged from fear to defiance. The oldest, a girl with auburn hair and eyes like broken glass, was holding the smallest child in her arms. A boy, no more than 4 years old, with dark curls and a face streaked with tears. Thorn felt something cold settle in his chest. He knew what this Luna had done. He knew what it cost. "Who is she?" he asked, not turning from the window. One of his patrol wolves, a young female named Lyra, stepped forward. "Marin Ashford, my lord. She was Luna to the Riverstone Pack before..." She hesitated. "Before the massacre. She's been living here with the orphans for the past 2 years. We've been watching her, but she's never caused trouble, never asked for help." Thorn's jaw tightened. The Riverstone massacre was a wound that still bled in the memories of the Northern Territories. An entire pack slaughtered by rogues in a single night. The Alpha, his mate, their children, all of them dead. Marin had been the pack's Luna, second only to the Alpha's mate in rank. She had survived, though no one knew how. And now she was here, bleeding out in the snow, having thrown herself between 6 orphaned pups and a rogue pack that would have torn them apart. "Bring her inside," Thorn said, "carefully." They carried her into the orphanage on a makeshift stretcher. The children scattered as Thorn entered, retreating to the corners of the main room like frightened rabbits. All except one. The smallest boy, Cale, stood his ground. He was trembling, his fists clenched at his sides, but he didn't run. He stared up at Thorn with eyes that were far too old for his face, eyes that had seen things no child should see. "You're the Alpha King," Kyle said. His voice was small but steady. Thorn inclined his head. "I am. Are you going to save her?" Thorn looked at the Luna lying on the floor of the orphanage, her breathing shallow and labored. The healer was already working, hands glowing with the faint green light of healing magic, but Thorn could see the doubt in her expression. The wounds were too severe, the damage too extensive. "I will try," Thorn said. Cale stepped closer. "She smells like my mother." Thorn frowned. "Your mother? I never knew her," Kyle continued, his voice breaking. "She died when I was born, but I know her smell. I know it in my bones, and she..." He pointed at Marin. "She has the same smell, like home, like safe." Thorn felt something shift in the air. He looked at the other children, and they were all nodding. The auburn-haired girl, the twin boys with matching scars, the dark-skinned girl with wolf-gold eyes, the lanky boy who couldn't have been more than 10, they were all staring at Maren with expressions of fierce devotion. "She protected us," the auburn-haired girl said. "She always protects us." Thorn knelt beside Cale, bringing himself eye-level with the child. "What is your name, pup?" "Cale." "Cale," Thorn repeated. "Can you tell me more about this smell, this feeling?" Cale's eyes filled with tears. "When she holds me, I remember things I shouldn't remember. Lullabies I never heard. Stories I was never told. She makes me feel like I belong to someone." Thorn's breath caught. He looked at Maren, really looked at her, and felt the faint pull of something ancient and inexplicable. A bond, not pack, not mate, something else entirely. The healer shook her head. "My lord, I can stabilize her, but she's slipping into a coma. Her wolf is trying to heal the damage, but it's too much. If she doesn't wake within the next few days—" "She will wake," Thorn said. The words were a command, not a hope. He stood and addressed his patrol. "We're taking her to the capital, all of them." Garrett stepped forward. "My lord, the orphans—" "They stay together," Thorn interrupted. "If this Luna protected them, then we will honor that. They are under my protection now, all of them." The children stared at him with wide eyes. Cale's tears had stopped, but his small hand was gripping the edge of Maren's stretcher, as if he could anchor her to the world through sheer will. "Will she wake up?" he whispered. Thorn didn't lie to children. He had learned that lesson long ago. "I don't know." "She has to," Kyle said, his voice fierce despite the tears. "She has to." The capital of wolves and memory, the capital of the Northern Territories, was carved from stone and ice, a fortress city that clung to the side of a mountain like a predator waiting to strike. Thornhaven, they called it, named for the Alpha King who had built it 2 centuries ago, a wolf of such power that legends still whispered his name in the frost. Thorn Blackwater ruled from the Iron Throne, a seat forged from the weapons of his enemies and blessed by the old gods. But today he was not on his throne. He was in the healing wing of the palace, standing vigil over a Luna who refused to wake. 7 days had passed since the attack. 7 days since Maren Ashford had thrown herself between the rogues and the orphans. 7 days since her body had been carried through the gates of Thornhaven on a stretcher, her silver fur matted with blood, her heart barely beating. The healers had worked miracles. They had closed the wounds, repaired the broken bones, coaxed her wolf into healing the damage to her spine and throat. But they could not wake her. Her body lived, but her mind, her spirit, was somewhere else. The orphans visited every day, Kyle especially. The small boy would sit beside Maren's bed for hours, his hand wrapped around hers, his lips moving in silent conversation. Sometimes he sang to her, soft lullabies in a language Thorn didn't recognize. Other times he simply held her hand and cried. Thorn watched from the doorway, his arms crossed over his chest. He had questions, so many questions, but no answers. The more he learned about Maren Ashford, the less he understood. She had been Luna of the Riverstone Pack, yes, but she had never borne children. She had never taken a mate. According to the records, she had simply appeared one day, a lone wolf with silver fur and winter eyes, and claimed a place in the pack through sheer will and competence. The Alpha had recognized her strength and given her the title of Luna, second only to his mate. And then the massacre had happened. 147 wolves dead in a single night. Men, women, children, all of them slaughtered. The only survivor had been Maren, found unconscious in the ruins of the Alpha's den, her body covered in wounds that should have killed her. No one knew how she had survived. No one knew why the rogues had left her alive. And no one knew where she had gone after she recovered. Until 2 years ago, when rumors began to spread of a silver wolf living in an abandoned orphanage on the edge of the Thornwood, taking in pups that no one else wanted. "My lord," Thorn turned to find his second-in-command standing behind him. Garrett was a wolf of few words, but his loyalty was absolute. He had fought beside Thorn for 20 years, and in all that time, Thorn had never seen him look uncertain. Until now. "What is it?" Thorn asked. "The children," Garrett said carefully. "They're asking questions. Questions we can't answer." "What kind of questions?" "Questions about her." Garrett nodded toward Maren. "They want to know why she smells like their mothers, why she feels like pack even though she has no blood tie to any of them. The healers say it's impossible, but the children insist," Thorn finished. Garrett nodded. "Kyle especially. He says he can feel her in his dreams, that she's calling to him, that she needs to wake up, but something is holding her back." Thorn's gaze returned to the Luna on the bed. In sleep, she looked younger, vulnerable. But there was a strength in the set of her jaw, a stubbornness in the way her fingers curled even in unconsciousness. "Have you ever heard of a wolf bonding to children that aren't theirs?" Thorn asked. Garrett was silent for a long moment. "In the old stories, yes. Before we were civilized, before we built cities and packs and laws, there were wolves who could bond to any pup, any child. We called them moon mothers. But those are just legends, my lord. No one has seen a moon mother in 200 years, Thorn said, since the last one was executed for witchcraft." Garrett's eyes widened. "You don't think—" "I don't know what to think," Thorn interrupted. "But I know what I feel. And I know what those children feel. They're not lying, they're not imagining it. There's a bond between them and this Luna, and it's real." He stepped into the room and approached the bed. Up close, he could see the faint rise and fall of Maren's chest, the flutter of her eyelids, as if she were dreaming. Her scent was clean and sharp, like pine and snow, and something older. Something that made his wolf stir with recognition. "Maren Ashford," he said softly. "Can you hear me?" No response. "The children need you," he continued. "Kyle needs you. If you're in there, if you're fighting, fight harder." Still nothing. Thorn reached out and placed his hand over hers. The contact sent a jolt through him, a rush of sensation that felt like recognition and remembrance all at once. His wolf surged forward, pressing against his skin, and for a moment, just a moment, he felt something else in the room with them. A presence, vast and ancient and gentle, and then it was gone. Thorn withdrew his hand and stepped back. "Double the guard on this room. No one enters without my permission." "Yes, my lord." As Garrett left, Thorn remained. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, his elbows on his knees, his gaze fixed on the Luna who had sacrificed everything for children that were not hers. "Who are you?" he whispered. "And why do I feel like I've been waiting for you my entire life?" When the smallest spoke truth to power. On the 8th day, Kyle broke. It happened in the middle of the night, when the palace was quiet and the guards were changing shifts. The small boy had been sitting beside Maren's bed, as he did every night, whispering to her in that strange language only he seemed to know. But something was different tonight. Something had shifted. Kyle stood abruptly, his small body trembling with emotion. "Wake up," he said, his voice cracking. "Please wake up. I need you. I don't know who I am without you." The door to the healing room opened and Thorn entered. He had been unable to sleep, haunted by dreams of silver wolves and ancient voices. When he saw Kale standing over Maren, tears streaming down his face, something in his chest tightened. "Kale," Thorn said gently, "it's late. You should be sleeping." "I can't sleep," Kyle said. "Not while she's like this, not while she's trapped." Thorn crossed the room and knelt beside the boy. "Trapped?" Kyle nodded, his eyes never leaving Maren's face. "She's in the dark place. The place where mothers go when they lose their pups. She's been there before. She knows the way. But this time she can't find the way back." Thorn felt a chill run down his spine. "How do you know this?" "I can feel her," Kyle whispered. "In my chest, right here." He pressed his small hand against his heart. "She's scared. She thinks we don't need her anymore. She thinks—" His voice broke. She thinks we'll be okay without her. And will you? Thorn asked quietly. Cale's eyes met his, and in those depths Thorn saw a pain that was far too old for a child of 4. No, we won't. She's our mother, not by blood, not by birth, but by choice, by love. She chose us when no one else would. She protected us when the world wanted us dead. And now she's dying because we're not strong enough to pull her back. Thorn's throat tightened. He had been Alpha King for 15 years. He had led armies, conquered territories, made decisions that cost thousands their lives. But in this moment, kneeling before a 4-year-old boy who spoke with the wisdom of the ancient ones, he felt helpless. "What can I do?" he asked. Kyle looked at him with eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. "You're the Alpha King. You have power, authority. The old gods listen to you. Tell her she's allowed to come back. Tell her we need her. Tell her—" He choked on a sob. "Tell her she's our mother, and we love her." Thorn stared at the child for a long moment. Then he stood and approached Maren's bed. He placed one hand on her forehead and the other over her heart, feeling the faint flutter of life beneath his palm. "Maren Ashford," he said, his voice resonating with the authority of an alpha. "I am Thorn Blackwater, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. I speak with the voice of the old gods and the power of the moon. You have protected these children with your life. You have given them love when the world offered only cruelty. And now they ask for you to return." He paused, feeling the weight of the moment. "You are their mother, not by blood, but by bond, by sacrifice, by choice. And they need you. His voice softened. "I need you. The world needs you. Come back to us, Luna. Come back to your children." The room fell silent. For a long moment, nothing happened. And then, Maren's eyelids fluttered. Kyle gasped and lunged forward, his small hands grasping her arm. "Mother! Mother, please!" Maren's eyes opened. They were clouded at first, unfocused and distant, but then they found Kyle's face, and something in them cleared. Recognition, love, relief. "Kyle," she whispered, her voice rough and broken. Kyle burst into tears and buried his face in her shoulder. "You came back! You came back!" Maren's arms moved slowly, hesitantly, as if she couldn't quite believe he was real. Then she wrapped them around the small boy and held him close, her own tears falling into his dark curls. Thorn stepped back, his chest tight with emotion. He had seen many things in his life, battles won and lost, kingdoms risen and fallen, love found and destroyed. But he had never seen anything quite like this. A Luna with no pack, a child with no mother, and the moment when they found each other again. The truth beneath. Silver. Fur Maren woke slowly, like rising from deep water. The world came back in pieces. The soft bed beneath her, the scent of healing herbs, the warmth of a small body pressed against her side. Kyle. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong, and the knowledge that he was safe, that they were all safe, was enough to make her weep. But there were others in the room. She could sense them. The Alpha King, watching from the shadows with eyes that burned like coals. The healers, murmuring among themselves. The guards at the door. And beyond them, the other children. She could feel them too, their presence a constant hum in the back of her mind. Ilara, fierce and protective. The twins, Ren and Kai, always together. Senna with her wolf gold eyes, and Tobias with his quiet strength. They were all there, waiting, watching. "How long?" Maren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 8 days, Thorn answered. He stepped into the light, and she saw him clearly for the first time. He was massive, even for an alpha, broad-shouldered and scarred, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. But there was kindness in his face too, buried beneath layers of authority and command. "The children?" she asked. "Safe, all of them." Maren closed her eyes and felt the relief wash over her. "The rogues, dead." She nodded slowly. That was good. That was right. She had done what she needed to do. She had protected them. "Why?" Thorn asked. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Maren opened her eyes and met his gaze. Why what? Why did you protect them? You're not their mother. You're not their pack. You owe them nothing. Maren was silent for a long moment. Then she looked down at Kyle, who had fallen asleep against her shoulder, his small hand still clutching her shirt. I owe them everything, she said quietly. Explain. Maren shifted carefully, not wanting to wake the boy. I was Luna of the Riverstone pack. I was strong, respected. I had power and position and everything a wolf could want. But I had no children, no mate. I was... She paused, searching for the word. Empty. Thorn said nothing, waiting. When the massacre happened, I should have died with the others. I wanted to die with them. But the rogues, they left me alive. I don't know why. Maybe they thought I would suffer more that way. Maybe the old gods had other plans. But I survived. She looked at Thorn, her eyes fierce despite the weakness in her body. And when I woke up in the ruins of my pack, surrounded by the bodies of everyone I had ever known, I made a choice. I could die, or I could live. And if I was going to live, it had to be for something. It had to mean something. So you found the children, Thorn said. I found Kyle first. He was barely 2 years old, shivering in the snow beside his mother's body. She had died giving birth to him, and his pack had left him to freeze. When I picked him up, he looked at me with these eyes. Her voice broke. He looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered, like I was hope. She wiped at her eyes with her free hand. I couldn't leave him. I couldn't walk away. So I took him to the orphanage, and I promised him that he would never be alone again. And then I found Ilara, and the twins, and Senna, and Tobias. One by one I found them, children that the world had abandoned, children that no one wanted. And you wanted them, Thorn said softly. I needed them, Maren corrected, as much as they needed me. They gave me purpose. They gave me a reason to wake up every morning. She looked down at Kyle again, her expression softening. They made me a mother. Thorn was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been haunting him since he first saw her lying in the snow. What did Kyle mean when he said you smell like his mother? Maren's breath caught. He said that? He said you have the same smell as the mother he never knew. That you make him feel like he belongs to someone. The other children said the same thing. Maren's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to explain it. When I hold them, I feel like they're mine, like they've always been mine. And when they call me mother, it feels right. It feels true. The healers say you've never borne children, Thorn said carefully. I haven't. Then how? I don't know. Maren's voice rose, startling Kale awake. She immediately soothed him, running her fingers through his hair until he settled back against her. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. I don't know how it works. I just know that when I found these children, something in me recognized them. Something deeper than blood, deeper than pack. It's like my soul knew them before my body ever did. Thorn stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, there are legends, old stories from before the packs were formed, about wolves who could bond to any child, any pup, regardless of blood. They called them moon mothers, blessed by the old gods to love without limit. Maren's eyes widened. I've heard those stories, but they're just myths, fairy tales. Are they? Thorn asked. He gestured to the children gathered in the hallway, their faces pressed against the window, watching their mother with fierce devotion. Look at them. They love you like you gave birth to them. They would die for you. And you... He looked at her, his eyes intense. You threw yourself between them and 12 rogues without hesitation, without fear. That's not duty, Maren. That's not obligation. That's love. Maren looked at the children and felt her heart swell with emotion. I would do it again, she whispered. I would do it 1,000 times. I know, Thorn said. And in his voice she heard something that sounded like reverence, the Council of Wolves and ancient law. 3 days later, Maren was strong enough to stand. The healers had worked their magic, and her body had healed with a speed that defied explanation. But Thorn knew the truth. It wasn't the healers who had saved her. It was the children. Their love, their need, had pulled her back from the edge of death and anchored her to the world. Now she stood before the Council of Elders, the ruling body of the Northern Territories. They were ancient wolves, grey-muzzled and sharp-eyed, who remembered the old ways and kept the old laws, and they did not approve of Marin Ashford. "She is Luna of no pack," Elder Rowan said, his voice thin and reedy. "She has no mate, no blood ties to these children. By what right does she claim them as her own?" Marin stood in the center of the council chamber, her back straight and her chin raised. The children stood behind her, Kyle clutching her hand, Ilara with her arm around the twins, Senna and Tobias flanking them like guards. "By the right of sacrifice," Marin said, her voice clear and strong. "I have protected these children with my life. I have given them shelter, food, love. I have been their mother in every way that matters." "Love does not make law," Elder Rowan snapped. "Blood makes law, pack makes law. You are an outsider, a wolf with no ties and no claim. These children should be distributed among the packs, given to families who can raise them properly." "No." The word was spoken by Kale, his small voice ringing through the chamber. He stepped forward, his eyes blazing with defiance. "We won't go. We belong to her." Elder Rowan's eyes narrowed. "You are a child. You do not get to decide." "I am pack," Kyle interrupted. "We all are. She is our Luna, and we are her pups. That's the law. That's the bond. You can't break it just because you don't understand it." The chamber fell silent. The elders exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from confusion to outrage. But Thorn, watching from his throne, felt something shift in the air. The boy was right. The bond was real, and no amount of legal maneuvering could change that. "The child speaks the truth," Thorn said, his voice cutting through the silence. All eyes turned to him. "I have witnessed the bond between this Luna and these children. It is real, it is powerful, and it is recognized by the old gods." Elder Rowan bristled. "My lord, with all due respect, the old gods do not intervene in matters of pack law." "The old gods created pack law," Thorn interrupted. "And they created something else too, something we thought was lost to time. Moon mothers. Wolves blessed with the ability to bond to any child, to love without limit, to protect without question." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Elder Rowan's face paled. "That is a myth, a story told to pups." "Is it?" Thorn stood and descended from his throne, his presence filling the room. "Explain to me then how 6 orphaned children all feel the same bond to a Luna they share no blood with. Explain to me how this Luna survived wounds that should have killed her simply because her children needed her to live. Explain to me how she threw herself in front of 12 rogues, without fear, without hesitation, because her children were in danger." He stopped in front of Marin, his eyes locked on hers. "This is not a myth, Elder Rowan. This is truth. Standing before us is a moon mother, blessed by the old gods and claimed by these children as their own. And I will not allow her to be separated from them." The silence that followed was deafening. Elder Rowan looked like he wanted to argue, but the other elders were watching Marin with something akin to awe. Even the guards at the door had shifted, their postures relaxing, as if they too felt the truth in Thorn's words. "What do you propose, my lord?" another elder asked. "Elder Mira, a silver-haired she-wolf with kind eyes." Thorn turned to face the council. "I propose we recognize Marin Ashford as Luna of her own pack, a pack consisting of herself and these 6 children. They will be under my protection, with full rights and privileges afforded to any pack within the Northern Territories." "A pack of orphans and outcasts?" Elder Rowan scoffed. "That is unprecedented." "So is a moon mother," Thorn shot back. "We are living in unprecedented times. The old magic is returning. The old bonds are awakening. We can either embrace it or fight it." I know which side I choose. He looked at Maren, and something passed between them, an understanding, a promise. I choose to protect her, Thorn said. I choose to honor the bond she shares with these children, and I challenge anyone who disagrees to face me in combat. The chamber fell silent. No one moved, no one spoke. The challenge hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown down before the entire council. Finally, Elder Mira stood. I support the Alpha King's decision. Let the Luna and her children be recognized as pack. One by one, the other elders stood. Even Elder Rowan, though his expression was sour, eventually rose to his feet. So be it, Elder Rowan said. But mark my words, Alpha King. This will change everything. Thorn smiled, but there was no humor in it. I'm counting on it. The pack that love. Built Maren stood on the balcony of her new quarters in Thornhaven, watching the sun set over the mountains. Behind her, she could hear the children laughing. Ren and Kai were wrestling on the floor, Elara was reading to Senna, and Tobias was attempting to teach Kyle how to carve wood without losing a finger. It had been 2 weeks since the council meeting, 2 weeks since Thorn had declared her Luna of her own pack and granted them protection within the capital. The adjustment had been difficult. The children were not used to palace life, and Maren was not used to being respected instead of feared. But they were together. That was all that mattered. Mother? Kyle appeared at her side, his small hand slipping into hers. Are you sad? Maren looked down at him and smiled. No, sweetheart, I'm not sad. Then why do you look like you're about to cry? Maren knelt, so she was eye level with the boy. Sometimes people cry when they're happy too, when they have something so precious they can't believe it's real. Kyle's eyes widened. We're precious. You're everything. She pulled him into a hug, breathing in his scent, pine and earth and something uniquely Kyle. You and your siblings, you're my whole world. We love you too, Mother, Kyle said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. Maren held him for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything that had brought them to this point. The loss, the pain, the sacrifice, but also the love, the hope, the second chance. When she finally released him, she found the other children gathered around her. Elara with her fierce protectiveness, the twins with their matching grins, Senna with her quiet wisdom, Tobias with his gentle strength. We're pack now, Elara said, officially. We've always been pack, Maren corrected. The council just made it legal. What happens now? Senna asked. Maren considered the question. What did happen now? They had safety. They had recognition. But the world outside was still dangerous. The rogues were still out there. And there were other wolves who would see a pack of orphans and a Luna with no mate as weakness. Now we live, Maren said finally. We grow, we become strong, and we show the world what a pack built on love can do. The children cheered, and Maren felt her heart swell. This was her pack, her family, her purpose, and she would die before she let anything happen to them. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She stood and crossed the room, opening the door to find Thorn standing on the other side. He was dressed in casual clothes, a simple tunic and trousers, but he still radiated authority. Alpha King, Maren said, bowing her head slightly. Thorn, he corrected. When we're not in council, you can call me Thorn. Maren nodded. What can I do for you, Thorn? He glanced past her at the children, who were trying very hard to pretend they weren't eavesdropping. I wanted to check on you. Make sure you were settling in. We're fine, Maren said. Better than fine. The children are happy. That's all that matters. Thorn's expression softened. You've given them something incredible. A family, a home, a future. They've given me the same, Maren said quietly. Thorn was silent for a moment. Then he said, There's something else I wanted to discuss with you, privately. Maren glanced back at the children. Elara immediately took charge, herding the younger ones toward their rooms. We'll be fine, Mother. Go talk to the Alpha King. Maren stepped out onto the balcony, closing the door behind her. Thorn followed, his presence somehow both comforting and unnerving. What is it? Maren asked. Thorn leaned against the railing, his eyes on the horizon. I've been thinking about what happened at the council, about what I said. About me being a moon mother? Yes. He turned to face her. I meant it, Maren. I've seen the bond between you and those children. It's real, it's powerful, and it's rare. Maren swallowed hard. What are you saying? I'm saying that you're special. That what you can do, love without limit, bond without blood, is a gift. And I think the old gods brought you here for a reason. Maren's heart began to race. What reason? Thorn's eyes met hers, and in their depths she saw something that made her breath catch. Longing, hope, vulnerability. To show us what we've forgotten, he said softly. That family isn't just blood. That love isn't just mate bonds and pack ties. That sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones we choose. Maren stared at him, unable to speak. I want to help you, Thorn continued. I want to protect you and your pack. But more than that, I want to understand you, to know you, to... He stopped, as if the words were too difficult to say. To what? Maren whispered. Thorn reached out and took her hand. The contact sent a jolt through her, a rush of sensation that felt like recognition and promise all at once. To be part of your pack, he said, if you'll have me. Maren's eyes widened. An alpha king, asking to join a pack of orphans and outcasts. It was unheard of, it was impossible. It was exactly what she needed. Yes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, we'll have you. Where shadows end and moonlight begins. Spring came to Thornhaven like a promise. The snow melted from the mountains, revealing green meadows and wildflowers that bloomed in defiance of the cold. The children ran through the palace gardens, their laughter echoing off the stone walls, and Maren watched them with a heart so full it ached. 6 months had passed since the attack, 6 months since she had thrown herself between the rogues and her children, 6 months since Thorn had declared her Luna of her own pack and promised his protection. In that time, everything had changed. The children had grown. Kyle was stronger now, no longer the trembling pup who woke with nightmares every night. Ilara had begun training with the palace guards, her fierce spirit channeled into something productive. The twins had discovered a talent for strategy and were learning to play the political games of the court. Senna had bonded with the palace healers and was studying the old magics. And Tobias, quiet, gentle Tobias, had found his place as the pack's storyteller, keeping alive the memories and legends that the others might forget. And Maren had found something she never expected: peace. She stood in the garden now, watching as Thorn taught Kale how to throw a knife. The boy was concentrating so hard, his tongue stuck out between his teeth, and when the knife finally hit the target, he let out a whoop of joy. Thorn ruffled his hair, grinning. Good throw, pup. Try again. Maren smiled. Over the past 6 months, Thorn had become more than just their protector. He had become part of their family. He joined them for meals, read bedtime stories to the younger children, and spent hours teaching the older ones everything from combat to politics. And when the nightmares came, because they still came sometimes, he was there, standing guard outside their door, a silent promise that nothing would ever hurt them again. Mother, Kyle called, waving at her. Did you see? I hit the target. I saw, sweetheart, Maren called back. You did wonderfully. Kyle beamed and turned back to Thorn, already asking for another lesson. Maren watched them for a moment longer, then turned to find the other children scattered across the garden. This was her pack, her family, her world, and she would never take it for granted. Footsteps approached from behind, and she turned to find Elder Mira walking toward her. The elder's silver hair was pulled back in a braid, and her kind eyes were warm. Luna Maren, Elder Mira said, bowing her head slightly. Elder Mira, Maren returned the bow. What brings you to the gardens? I wanted to speak with you, Elder Mira said, about the council's decision to recognize your pack. Maren's heart sank. Had they changed their minds? Were they going to take the children away? But Elder Mira smiled. I wanted to tell you that you were right, all of you. The bond you share with those children, it's not something that can be legislated or controlled. It simply is. And in recognizing it, we've opened the door to something beautiful. What do you mean? Maren asked. Other wolves have come forward, Elder Mira explained. Lone wolves, orphaned pups, outcasts who have nowhere else to go. They're asking if they can join your pack, if they can find the same love and acceptance that your children have found. Maren's eyes widened. I don't know if I can. You don't have to decide now, Elder Mira said gently, but I wanted you to know what you've created here. It's not just a pack, it's a movement, a reminder that family is more than blood, that love is more than law, and that sometimes the old ways need to make room for something new. Maren looked at her children, at Thorn standing among them like he had always belonged, and she understood. This was what the old gods had wanted. This was why she had survived the massacre, why she had found the children, why Thorn had recognized her for what she was. She was a moon mother, yes, but she was also a bridge, between the old ways and the new, between law and love, between pack and family, and her work was just beginning. Tell them to come, Maren said, her voice steady. Tell them that if they need a family, they'll find one here. Elder Mira smiled. I will. As the elder walked away, Maren felt Thorn's presence at her side. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Maren watched as Cale ran to her, throwing his arms around her waist and burying his face in her shirt. She felt the weight of him, the trust, the love, and she knew. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, she said. Thorn nodded. Then we'll do it together, all of us. Maren looked up at him, and in his eyes she saw the same promise she had made to the children. Protection, love, family. Together, she agreed. And as the sun set over Thornhaven, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Maren held her children close and felt, for the first time in her life, truly complete. She had found her purpose. She had found her family. She had found her home. And nothing, not rogues, not councils, not even the old gods themselves, would ever take that away from her. The smallest pup had been right. She did smell like mother, because she was mother, not by blood, but by choice, by sacrifice, by love, and that was the strongest bond of all.